I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as a backdrop to some of our analysis today, we're going to look at the snow water equivalent map, which was valid through the February 10th. And what I'm concerned about here are places that don't currently have snow cover, but also we want to know if we were able to melt all of that snow, how much water would we get out of it right now? And I'm going to start from the west and work my way to the east. Now, for folks in the west, it's often instructive to go back and look at past years at where we currently sat in terms of snow cover. So I'm going to do that really quickly, just 6 years worth of data here. 2015, we were building a bit of an El Nino, but by this time in February, you can see how low the snowpack was in parts of the Sierra Nevada and the Intermountain West. From there, getting into 16, that snowpack increased quite a bit, but as you get into 2017, which is what you see here, at this point in the year, we had a lot of snowpack, much better go of it than the previous 2 years. Now, 18 was a year where things pulled back, and you can see throughout Nevada into the Sierra Nevada mountains, very little snowpack at this time of year. But look at the difference between 18 and 19. Much more snowpack through the end of February here. And this was 2020 at this particular point. And here's your latest data right here, 2021. Now, a lot of this from the recent big snowfall events. And yes, we do have good chances of adding to the Sierra Nevada over the next week. And I'll show you that snow map in just a few moments here. But I want to give you some numbers on this. Basin average snow water content. When you look at this, you want to see the numbers as close to 100 as possible, because that would be near average. What I notice is that we're sitting anywhere between 70 and 80% in the Sierra Nevada, going across Nevada over toward the Four Corner states. Many of the reporting stations are below where they should be, for this time of year. But in the Pacific Northwest, specifically this area that I'm kind of highlighting, I'm expecting quite a bit of snow here in the near term, and it will spread down into the Four Corner states, which you're going to see, and we're going to add a little bit to the Sierra Nevada. So we're going to get to those snow maps in just a few moments. But as I was looking at satellite imagery yesterday to try to assess how much snow was in the plains, it was mostly obscured by some high cloud and also a lot of fog. You can see the fog underneath it there, and it extended clear down to the Gulf Coast, especially in the early morning hours. Now, speaking of early morning hours, about 2:40 this morning, I was concerned about what these temperatures were doing, because we can see coming out of the Canadian Prairie into the Northern Plains, temperatures in that minus 20 to 30 range, and we already were seeing single digits come right down here through parts of Nebraska and Kansas, with the nose of the coldest air making it pretty far south here in Texas. The main battleground, if you will be right here, where we're going to have quite a bit of warm air over the southeast, overrunning this cold, shallow air mass, giving us this mixed precipitation in this area, which has prompted a lot of ice storm warnings. But what I'd like to do next is I want to talk about where we don't have snow cover, where the temperatures are going to get cold, and what this might do to possibly damage some of our wheat crop. So I just threw in here the winter wheat production map from the USDA and some research here looking at wheat resistance to freeze injury. So we're coming off of that time period of maximum resistance where those temperatures can get down to 10 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit and still not see the damage. But as we start to move through February into March, those temperature over which we can get the damage start to rebound. And so let's just take a look at some of this unsnow-covered ground here, because it may not be until Saturday night or Sunday that we start to fill this in with some snow. And just take note here, in parts of the western Dakotas, getting into southern Saskatchewan, even over into parts of Alberta, there's an area here that doesn't have much snow on the ground either. So from there, temperatures. Remember, when you look at these maps, the numbers represent for certain stations what the actual low temperatures are forecast to be. The color shading tells you the departure from normal. You can see the cold air butting up against the Rocky Mountains. You can see the warmth still sitting over the southeast, and the collision, the boundary zone right in between that. But let's watch these temperatures going from here, from Thursday morning's lows into Friday. And we just see a lot of single digits and even some negative single digits in this area before the snow arrives. And even back up into Montana, this is well below those thresholds where we could be having some major problems on the wheat that's grown in this region. From there, going into Saturday, and now Saturday into Sunday, where we start to bring in that snow cover, we still have temperatures here that are getting dangerously close to that freeze damage region. Now, you notice that on Sunday, look at the axis of coldest air coming out of Montana straight here into Illinois, where we're going to have overnight low temperatures in that minus 10 to minus 25 range. And this, of course, is before I incorporate wind chill. But you'll notice from Sunday into Monday, Monday into Tuesday, probably the coldest extent of the air. We bring the freezing temperatures all the way down to the Gulf Coast here in the lower Mississippi River Valley, and the main cold pocket of air tucked away right here in the center part of the plains of the United States. Into Tuesday, you can now see that despite some of the snow cover we do expect in this area, that those overnight low temperatures down here in the -5 to -15 range in this area. And we start to see some moderation by the 17th, but it's going to take probably another 4 or 5 days after this before we start to see some real moderation toward the end of the month, and I'll finish the video talking about that. So you now see my concern about the winter wheat crop, but also all of the livestock in this area. I mean, these temperatures are going to be life-threatening, so we need to take care there. Okay, let's switch now over to a discussion about the precipitation types. So first, there's our wind chill advisories and our wind chill warnings. As I mentioned, we do have the nose of the jet coming in here into the Pacific Northwest, and so we have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. And I'll show you those snowfall totals in a few moments. Fog over parts of the southeast, that's what you see here. But this region right in through here has winter weather advisories in blue. This is all the ice storm warning area we'll talk about in a moment, and the pinks on the back side of that represent where we have winter storm warnings out. So let's take a look at what's going on here by first watching the surface winds. So you notice that by midday today, our surface winds are taking that cold air all the way down here, to the Gulf Coast, but there's going to be a boundary sitting somewhere in this vicinity here at the surface. So that tells us the farthest south extension of the coldest air. But as we go from there and just step up one level, let's go up just a mile in the atmosphere. This is the flow. So what you notice is that we're bringing in quite a bit of moisture and therefore warmer air that's going to overrun that very shallow layer of colder air. And for those of us that are coming out of the Canadian prairie into the northern plains of the U.S. into the Midwest, I would just like to point out the source region of that colder air. As you can see here, it's coming out of the Arctic, out of the Canadian archipelago, and it is brutally cold. But right in through here will be the position of the front in the low levels of the atmosphere. And as you step from here to the jet stream level, I just want to show you one thing. This flow, this screaming jet into this direction, tells me how warm the air is on this side versus how cold it is in the tropospheric polar vortex that's sitting, basically right in this vicinity. And when you think about this, this will be a setup for flooding rains over the southeast. And then on top of this area is where we're expecting to have the mixture of precipitation. But the wave we're going to keep close watch on is going to be right out here as it kind of punches through this and reinvigorates into a deep low. But this is going to be next week, and so there's a lot of time for this to change. We're going to get to that in a few moments. Now, early this morning, looking at the lightning data, with some of the sleet and freezing rain moving through parts of the lower and mid-Mississippi River Valley. I'm talking about Arkansas here, Mississippi, getting over toward Memphis. We had some lightning in this, and there were storms to the south in parts of Louisiana and southern Mississippi. Very, very active storms early this morning. So from there, I want to talk about this freezing rain and this overrunning idea by showing you a special sounding launched in Little Rock, Arkansas last night at 6Z, which would be midnight. Now what you see here is the temperature profile of the atmosphere. So the atmospheric temperature is there, and the dew point temperature is this line. Now on these diagrams, I'm just going to draw in blue right here the freezing line. So what we look for here is if you're on this side of that line, the temperatures are above freezing, and if you're on this side of the line, they are below freezing. Now what we want to highlight is, I'll just shade this in red, is this area right in through here. That would be our melting layer. That's the nose of that warm air coming up out of the Gulf, whereas the surface cold air has undercut it here. And what we call this, I'll trace it in black, is just a massive temperature inversion right there. See it? And then above that, the temperatures cool off rapidly. And that's why we have some convection happening out of this as well. But it's this shallow layer here of subfreezing air that's giving us this mixed precipitation. And just to look out over the next 5 days, the potential from parts of Texas through the very southeastern corner of Oklahoma, but northern Louisiana, right through Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then here with some cold air damming up against the Appalachian Mountains, we have our greatest risk of ice accumulation. Now, the numbers might be a bit too high, but this will just be the corridor over which we're going to watch for the greatest accumulations of ice as we work our way through the next system that comes through. And remember, there's another big one coming early next week that may spread even more of this into this area, into the Ohio River Valley. Now, I got to show you the dynamics of this. We're going to look here at vorticity. Remember, this is spin in the atmosphere. We watch for where we advect or move regions of high vorticity to where there is areas of low vorticity or even negative. And so what I was concerned about last week, as I get this playing here, was actually this wave that's cutting right here. See it? This wave that was cutting through Mexico, initially there was some concern that as it came out here in the Gulf, it was going to kick off a huge coastal low, spreading ice all the way down here into the southeast. But there's a problem through this weekend, and that is that this wave is not phased or connected with the one behind it or the one to the north. So to pull it back in and allow it to really invigorate a deep low here that could tap into the cold air that's in place, well, it's just out of phase. It's just not yet there. So what this ends up doing is it produces a lot of heavy rain over the southeast through the weekend and beyond. But what we're watching, I just got to step you back here so we can see this again. I want you to watch this wave right here. So keep an eye on this one. This is basically by tomorrow morning. You see that wave, by the time I get into Saturday morning, is now cutting into the Pacific Northwest. And then it comes diving down here into the Four Corners states. And this one does appear to phase better with the broader trough that was over Minnesota. Now, what's the point in telling you all of this? Well, that's the wave that dives down and introduces the chances for snow to cover that ground that's going to go over brutally cold. And then it appears that this wave has an inflection to it where it goes from being positively tilted to negatively tilted, and therefore out ahead of this, we expect early next week rapid cyclone development in this area, sending a deep low from Texas all the way through the Ohio River Valley. And that one could be extremely impactful. Now, I just want to point out, the atmosphere doesn't seem to be done there. The operational European drops another wave at the end of next week. This would be like Thursday into Friday, and sweeps it through the same area. Now, model-to-model differences have been very high, and each run has shown us a different solution for this. But this would make sense given what's going on with the flow of the atmosphere. So I know we're getting deep into this video here, but let's now look at the results of this. This morning, this is what we're expecting. You can see the freezing rain already in place here, with still snow showers across the eastern Corn Belt, snow here in northern Kentucky moving over to Virginia. And it's going to be very challenging to find where the rain snow line is going to be in Virginia. So using the European model, let's get it playing. Let me pause it and step you back here, okay? So we're going to go through the day here on Thursday. This is Thursday afternoon and evening. We can already start to see the effect of the cold air damming bringing the snow into this part of Virginia, but more ice on the backside of this. Light snow pushes through parts of the Central Plains into the western Corn Belt, and our first push of the moisture comes in the Pacific Northwest. So now we're going here from Thursday night into Friday morning. This is Friday afternoon and evening. So our first push comes in here, spreading some snow from Wyoming into the plains, covering up some of that ground Friday night in through here with some snow. But look at how wet things are going to be across the south. As I then take you out to Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening, you see another push here of freezing rain. Also freezing rain into the Appalachian Mountains and right up here along the cold air damming event in Virginia. And heavy, heavy rains over the southeast. But still have yet to bring in that snow into parts of the southern plains. Where is it going to come from? This is now where that wave I showed you is cutting through the west. You can see what it's doing for snow in the west. And then it dives down here. This is now overnight hours getting into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and evening. And it appears at that time we bring the snow into New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma, Kansas. This is Sunday evening. And now the phased low begins to take shape here. Now, we still don't have solid information to tell you if this is exactly how this is going to form out here on Monday morning. But once again, this same area that has had the mixed precipitation, we see freezing rain out ahead of this, potentially heavy snows in parts of Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and then this low races here by Monday night into Tuesday morning right up here toward Ohio. Now, yesterday it cut into Indiana. Previous runs push it over toward the east, but there will be a mixture of sleet and freezing rain in this area early next week and again along the Appalachian Mountains. Snow on the backside of this. And as this system pulls through, it then goes right up the east coast, potentially bringing a lot of snow there as well. Now remember, we still have cold air firmly in place on this high pressure cell behind this. And I'm going to show you this, but I want to tell you something. No details are set here. There's another system. Look, this is next Wednesday into next Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So you see the atmosphere is producing another trough that comes through this same area. So let's put it all together here by looking at some composite maps of all the precipitation. You can see here that through the next 7 days where we're missing all of this. You can see the heaviest rains over the southeast, and this corridor here getting the heaviest precip from the systems coming into the northwest. In terms of precipitation anomalies, this is our next 7 days compared to normal. With some places over the southeast, well, let's just take a look at it here, grabbing an extra 2, maybe upwards of 2.5, 3 inches of rainfall. In the west, you can see exactly where the flow is coming on shore here. Much above average precipitation across parts of the Cascades, getting into the Intermountain West, and then diving into the Southern Plains. But we got to wait a few days before that gets here. In terms of snow, I want to walk you through what the operational European model does. And as we look at this, I just want to remind you, let's not focus on the amounts, let's focus on the placement. Okay, we'll talk about amounts in a few moments. So already this morning, we were watching the snow in this area. Playing this forward, though, we see the light snow spreading through the plains. We see it coming into the Pacific Northwest. So we could already have, by Friday afternoon, some places here picking up a foot in parts of the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades. So what we're watching, though, is this is Friday, now getting into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon and evening, and now Sunday. Let's just stop it right here. It's Sunday afternoon. It's going to take until then to bring the snow to cover that ground where we were quite concerned. But notice we're leaving this uncovered here. Now, I want to show you what the models are doing with this next system. So let's just take you out here to Tuesday mid-morning. And you do see some higher snowfall amounts, possibly well over 6 inches of snow in parts of Oklahoma, getting into this part of Arkansas and Missouri. And the axis of heavy snow may be cutting into this area as well. But the 10-to-1 snow ratio, probably not the best to use given how cold it is here. And the exact timing of this is going to give us some difficulty predicting it. But I will tell you, the west-facing slopes in the mountains getting back over to the Cascades, picking up a lot of snow here just in the next 5 days, but beyond that as well. So over the next week, what's the probability of 3 inches? Here you've got it. What's the probability of 6 inches of snow? This is what it looks like from the European model. You can pause it and take a closer look at it. But you see what's happening due to that trough that's coming in like this and then running up toward Ohio. This is where we're expecting the heaviest corridor of snow, and it is going to move and it's going to shift. We also see the Northeast having a high probability of grabbing at least another 6 inches of snow as well. From there, what happens into week 2? Well, the jet stream tends to take over this configuration here with our trough ridge pattern, and it looks something like this in terms of the flow. So you see it coming in and then accelerating into the North Atlantic here. This is the depth of that cold air through day 10. By day 15, the atmosphere tries to advertise a bit of split flow, which is not what we want to see for California. But things gather again across the East Coast, which tells us our week 2 precipitation patterns are wet as the air comes in here into the Pacific Northwest, dry to the south of it, quite a bit of colder and drier air coming into the plains here, but where the jet stream accelerates out, this is going to be our most active corridor here in terms of weather on the eastern side of the United States. Moving to the end of this video here, and I know we have a lot to analyze. Temperatures day 5 through 10. This will be the heart of the coldest air in place here as we get past this weekend into early next week. But the models are suggesting some moderation as we get out here past the 23rd, 24th of the month in toward the end of the month. Both the GFS on the left and the European on the right relaxing this pattern. And I think there's some evidence for this. First of all, the polar vortex by day 10 is starting to retreat back up toward the Arctic, coming away from where it is right now, which is between the Hudson Bay and the Great Lakes, and starting to move back toward the Arctic. We do see that the Arctic oscillation tells me that that big high pressure cell sitting over the Arctic is going to start to weaken, and we're going to head back toward neutral conditions where it will sit here, it looks like, for the foreseeable future. The North Atlantic oscillation is also returning toward neutral conditions. What we're doing is we're flattening out the jet stream. We're also going to be getting rid of the big high pressure over the Arctic, which is going to allow the colder air to retreat. The MJO currently sitting in phase 7, which is strongly correlated with that cold air outbreak in this area. But if it does go into phase 8 and comes back into the null space, well, we start to see some moderation. That's what phase 8 looks like here. Cooler weather moves to the east and we get rid of it. And if we pop out again over into phase 4, 5, and 6, this would be a major warm-up here for a lot of the lower 48 and the Canadian Prairie. So I'm going to put that all together and show you one last map here. GFS extended model starts to show that by the end of February and the beginning of March, moderation happening in this area. And we're going to see the colder air retreating back to the west and northwest. And even though you see some pretty chilly air here, 5, 6, 10 degrees cooler than average, I think the cold air is going to be retreating pretty quickly as we go into the month of March. And I just tried to show you some support for that. Okay, I really appreciate you hanging on and listening to me today. We've got a lot that we had to discuss, but these are my current thoughts about the way things are shaping up over the next few weeks. Be very careful in that corridor right in through here over the next 5 to 6 days, as we are expecting a lot of ice, and that cold air that's coming out is absolutely brutal. So let's be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks.